Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera rakan-rakan di Facebook, Mosti dan juga Facebook saya. Pertamanya saya mohon maaf lewat 7 minit ya. Sorry, we're starting 7 minutes late. Sidang secara maya hari ini adalah berkenaan keputusan Jemaah Menteri pada 16 Disember 2020, iaitu saya telah membawa satu nota kabinet bagi meluluskan inisiatif bagi meningkatkan pekerja kemahiran dalam bidang sains, teknologi, kejuruteraan dan matematik. Ya. Kita nak memartabatkan lagi STEM menerusi program dana penyelidikan dan pembangunan atau dalam bahasa mudah di bawah Grant Research and Development MOSTI. Inisiatif ini melibatkan graduan yang sedang melanjutkan pengajian ke peringkat sarjana atau doktor falsafah. Mereka akan menerima allowance yang telah ditetapkan oleh MOSTI mengikut tahap pengajian mereka. Untuk itu, daripada saya hanya umumkan saja, saya hari ini bersama dengan tiga orang ahli panel bagi kita mengadakan dialog berkenaan dengan komuniti R&D di Malaysia ini, cabaran yang dihadapi oleh mereka, peluang yang ada di bawah MOSTI dan juga di bawah IPT, dan juga lanskap R&D untuk masa yang akan datang. Of course, this pandemic has seen the breakthrough of science, especially in the race to create a vaccine for COVID-19, and I think one thing that has come out of the pandemic that is positive is that people are listening to science, and scientists are being held up as role models, and no longer just your celebrities, your rock stars, but now people are looking at scientists. And science is really making a comeback in a big way against COVID-19. Bersama dengan saya pada hari ini adalah yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Chong Sok Ching, Senior Group Leader, Head and Neck Cancer Research Team at Cancer Research Malaysia. Hi, Professor Chong, how are you?
Hello, good morning everybody. Salam sejahtera.
Yeah. And also joining us is Encik Azali bin Azlan, iaitu penerima grant eScience MOSTI pada tahun 2016-2018 untuk pengajian peringkat sarjana. Pada masa sekarang sedang melanjutkan pengajian di peringkat PhD di University Science Malaysia. Hi Azali.
Hi.
Where are you now? Are you in Penang?
Yeah, I'm in Kedah now.
Oh, you're in Kedah. Okay, I didn't know USM moved to Kedah. And we also have Puan Mohaini binti Muhammad Hussein, GRA, Graduate Research Assistant and PhD di bawah program International Collaboration Fund MOSTI di Universiti Putra Malaysia. Morning, Mohaini.
Morning, Assalamualaikum.
Ya, terima kasih kepada semua panel yang hadir bersama dengan kita pada pagi ini. Seperti mana semua sedia maklum, kepentingan R&D sangat penting dan perlu diberi penekanan untuk negara kita mencapai status sebuah negara maju. Pencapaian ini adalah diukur melalui kedudukan Malaysia dalam beberapa indeks dunia. For instance, we look at the Global Innovation Index yang dikeluarkan oleh INSEAD dan juga WIPO ataupun World Intellectual Property Organization pada setiap tahun. Terkini berdasarkan laporan GII pada tahun 2020, kedudukan Malaysia not too bad, adalah di tangga ke-8 di kalangan negara-negara Asia dan ke-33 di dunia. Kedudukan terkini ini memperlihatkan peningkatan Malaysia sebanyak 2 tangga berbanding tahun-tahun sebelumnya, iaitu tangga ke-35 pada tahun 2018, dan ini merupakan satu peningkatan pencapaian yang baik bagi negara kita. But that's not good enough. Of course, we want to get better and we want to move up the rankings. Faktor penentu pencapaian ini adalah dengan melihat kepada peratusan nilai pencapaian Gross Domestic Expenditure on R&D ataupun GED terhadap GDP ataupun Gross Domestic Product. So this is the universal indicator on how much a country is allocating the resources on R&D, is the gross expenditure on R&D measured against the GDP ataupun KDNK dalam bahasa kebangsaan. Dalam hal ini, pencapaian Malaysia bagi GED adalah sebanyak 1.44% pada tahun 2019. Kedudukan Malaysia adalah tangga yang ke-7 jika dibandingkan dengan negara-negara ASEAN yang lain. dan di tangga 22 jika dibandingkan dengan negara-negara OECD. So we're not doing that well in terms of our rankings within ASEAN. Peratusan pencapaian GERD over GDP ini adalah seperti mana yang dilaporkan menerusi laporan Euro Monitor International daripada UNESCO, Eurostat dan World Competitiveness Yearbook 2018 dan juga National Survey of Research and Development R&D Malaysia oleh MASTIC di bawah MOSTI. Walaupun R&D negara terhadap keluaran dalam negara kasar telah meningkat daripada 1.26% pada 2014 to 1.44% in 2018, it is still too low for me. Sebab itulah kita mensasarkan di bawah dasar sains, teknologi dan inovasi negara menjelang tahun 2030 kita nak meningkatkan GERD kita, gross expenditure R&D over GDP to 3.5%. This is closer towards the industrialized country. Jadi sudah semestinya peningkatan ini akan didorong oleh pelbagai usaha yang digerakkan oleh pihak kerajaan. Namun pelbagai usaha masih perlu digerakkan untuk memastikan pencapaian negara dalam R&D dapat dipertingkatkan. Jadi berdasarkan pernyataan ini kita juga ingin mendengar apakah pandangan awal yang boleh diberikan oleh ahli panel kita terhadap lanskap R&D negara berdasarkan kedudukan ini. Mungkin saya jemput Professor Chong dulu. Professor, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your broad observations about R&D in this country and also the commitment from the government on spending on research and development. Over to you, Professor.
Okay, thank you very much. Terima kasih atas jemputan untuk menjadi ahli panel, and I'm happy to contribute my views here. As a scientist that has been educated in Malaysia and also built my career here as a researcher and a scientist, I think it's really nice to see that the investment into R&D has been increasing steadily. Of course, recently, YB Minister has opened our eyes wide by announcing that you have a very bold and ambitious goal to increase our GERD to GDP to be on par with the developed countries, for which I think should be lauded and applauded. I think the question in our mind as scientists and researchers would be like, how are we going to do it, and whether this is going to be a good time. And from my own experience as a scientist, I think this is a great time to do it. And I just want to share our experience that investment into research is not overnight. I think we can see that from the kind of vaccines companies that are now successful because of the COVID. But from our own experience, I think many of you may have heard that Cancer Research Malaysia would have a cancer vaccine that will come into clinical trials sometime this year. But not many people know that actually I got our first grant to start on that many years ago. So I got my first MOSTI grant in 2005, and with that grant, I identified the antigens to make the vaccine. And following that, many other grants, including MOSTI grants and those G2G grants, such as the Newton Ungku Oma grants, we are now able to work with global partners and hopefully launch a trial by the end of this year. And this would be a vaccine that would be important for our own population that hopefully will, in the longer term, drive the economic growth and also, most importantly, benefit the people in our region. So what I'm trying to say is that investment cannot be something that is overnight and has to be sustained. And I think we are on the trajectory of increasing our GERD to GDP, which is good for Malaysia, and hoping to see more of that. But investment is also not just into research grants, although we are really happy to see the Malaysian Grand Challenges and the grants that have been launched very recently. But I think investment in R&D also requires us to think about mainly investment into the ecosystem, right? What are the infrastructure that would be able to support the kind of R&D we want to do? What is the ecosystem in the industry that will be able to give jobs to the people that come up with all these brilliant ideas and brilliantly trained in R&D, and how do we maintain that so that we do not have brain drain. And this talent investment is very, very important because this will ensure that we have sustainability in our R&D plan rather than spurts of moments just to entertain, certain crises. So we can see that the people who are the main players right now in the COVID vaccine has already invested. They didn't only start this research when the pandemic started, right? And they are winners now because they have all along been building this technology and building on talent and building on investments in R&D. So I think sustainability and the plan to the sustainable plan for R&D is very important in the country.
Thank you, Professor. Very, very sensible and constructive views that I think are useful for policymakers. Sustainability, R&D doesn't happen overnight, and also investing in the ecosystem that supports the R&D that we're doing in our research centers. Mungkin Cik Azali, your views as somebody who's received R&D grants about our commitment to increase more funds and investments for R&D. What are your views?
Terima kasih atas jemputan. Assalamualaikum. Pertama sekali, saya berpendapat bahawa sesungguhnya berdasarkan pemerhatian saya pada tahun-tahun yang lepas, saya percaya yang kajian di Malaysia semakin merangsangkan. I was funded by eScience grant during my master project. So I believe that with the grant money, we are able to discover new novel findings yang dalam masa yang sama dapat membantu ke arah pendidikan baharu, contohnya vaksin. Dan saya diberi makluman oleh supervisor saya berkenaan dengan kenaikan allowance GRE ini, dan saya berasa bahawa inisiatif ini merupakan satu inisiatif yang sangat berharga kerana dia menggalakkan penyelidik-penyelidik seperti saya sendiri untuk lebih fokus kepada kajian, dan saya percaya terdapat banyak lagi ruang yang boleh dibaiki untuk kajian kepada kajian kita pada di Malaysia.
Dan di sini saya jemput Puan Mahaini, iaitu seorang pendidik di Universiti Putra Malaysia. Apakah pengalaman Puan sebagai seorang penyelidik? Adakah Puan rasa pembiayaan R&D di negara kita mencukupi? Dan adakah Puan rasa bahawa ekosistem R&D di negara kita kompetitif untuk kita menghalang daripada researchers kita pergi ke luar negara?
Menyentuh mengenai apa yang sebenarnya tadi YB katakan mengenai R&D di Malaysia. R&D di Malaysia telah bermula sejak daripada awal tahun 2000-an, di mana kita melihat sehingga ke hari ini kita telah melepasi wawasan 2020, kita telah pelbagai kajian dan penyelidikan yang kita telah jalankan, dan yang kita di antara kajian dan penyelidikan yang saya rasa paling signifikan dan masih segar dalam ingatan rakyat Malaysia ialah pelepasan angkasawan nombor 1 negara ke angkasa lepas sekitar tahun 2000-an. Dan ini merupakan satu fenomena di mana pada waktu itu penyelidikan demi penyelidikan diperlukan, dan sehingga hari ini pelaburan dalam bidang R&D amat penting dalam memastikan kelancaran sesebuah projek. Dan saya rasakan saya amat bersetuju bahawa dana R&D yang diberikan daripada Kerajaan Malaysia kepada kami sebagai pelajar sangat-sangat membantu dan sangat-sangat memangkin semangat kami untuk terus melakukan penyelidikan dan meningkatkan lagi kepercayaan kami semua sebagai penyelidik untuk meningkatkan produktiviti kami dan sekaligus memastikan kelancaran projek. Dan dengan adanya seperti yang dikatakan tadi oleh panel pertama mengenai pelaburan, dan juga sustainability, kajian dapat dijalankan sekaligus kita juga dapat menghasilkan kertas terbitan yang berkualiti dan meningkatkan lagi prestasi penyelidik kita sendiri.
Professor Chong, I'm going to come back to you. I want to talk about this brain drain issue because you raised it just now. Is it a serious issue amongst the R&D community here? Are we losing our top scientists to other countries? What can we do about it apart from obviously paying more?
I think it's a very serious problem. I can give you an example how serious it is. So actually, we have a lot of collaborators outside, right? Some of them are Malaysians themselves who have left the country and set up their own R&D in other countries like the US, the UK, Japan, even Singapore. So they actually love our graduates because we train them really well. They're all-rounded, and we get contacted every single time they have a position open. And every time somebody gets a grant, we'll get all these emails and say, do you have students from Malaysia graduating? Do you have PhDs graduating from your lab? It is a huge problem. Mainly, it's because of the non-competitiveness in the pay and the remuneration. But I think many scientists also relish the opportunity to be competitive scientifically. Meaning they want to be challenged intellectually, and they want to have an ecosystem where they can actually carry out their brightest ideas and work with the brightest people. So if we consistently have this brain drain, we wouldn't have the critical mass, the intelligent and creative critical mass in order to be able to retain talent, and becomes a vicious cycle. In addition to that, I think that's more of the academic situation, right? But for those who don't really want to take an academic position and want to still do R&D and do creative work in the industry, I think many companies have not really been setting up their R&D departments in Malaysia. We have to look into why that is so.
Yeah, I'm going to come to that. That's a very interesting point that I'm going to come to next. But before that, saya ada dapat laporan seorang pelajar daripada Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Agama Yan pada tahun 2008 dapat 21A. Nama dia adalah Azali Azlan. Kebetulan juga ada Azali Azlan di sini hari ini. Saya tak pasti sama ke tidak. 20A1 dan 12A2. I bet you still regret that A2 and you still remember which subject that's in. But anyway, I want to ask you, Azali, you broke the record by Dr. Amalina, but why were you not a brain drain case? Kenapa Azali balik ke sini? I'm sure you had opportunities overseas.
Cat is out of the bag.
Yeah.
It's a very tough question to answer. Okay.
Are you? Yeah. Carry on.
Okay. This is a question that I'm not expected to be asked. Jika diikutkan atas plan asal saya tu adalah saya ingin sambung belajar di luar negara, tapi disebabkan oleh faktor family dan kewangan, saya memutuskan untuk teruskan pengajian di USM dan saya tertarik dengan projek yang diberikan oleh supervisor saya. So I think he's here, he's online now. So disebabkan oleh grant yang diberi dan rangka projek yang saya perolehi, ia menggalakkan saya untuk terus berada di Malaysia. Dan for me, studying overseas or studying locally does not really matter that much during your postgraduate study. I think what matters most is what you do in your research, what paper you can come out from that research. Yeah. So
okay, thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot. I like to ask surprising questions. Seperti mana Professor Chong sebutkan tadi, I just launched this new R&D scheme under MOSTI, di mana saya cuba alignkan R&D kita dengan beberapa matlamat utama negara kita ataupun yang dikenali sebagai Malaysian Grand Challenges yang melihat kepada isu-isu seperti climate change, seperti masalah kesihatan, soal food security, soal economic competitiveness. Agar R&D ini ada kaitan secara langsung dengan the great missions of the country. And I hope that through the launch of the Grand Challenges and tying it in with the Dasar Sains, Teknologi dan Inovasi Negara for the next 10 years, we have more demand-driven R&D as well. So I'm going to come to the point about R&D as well as the industry. Kalau kita melihat kepada kajian yang dibuat oleh Akademi Sains Malaysia, peratusan penyelidik di Malaysia in full-time researchers, 70% berada di IPT. Dan I'm not saying that IPT-driven R&D is not demand-driven, but we do have an issue as far as R&D in the private sector is concerned. Still very low. A lot of the R&D is being ataupun pelaburan daripada R&D dilaksanakan oleh kerajaan, and that is the role of governments anyway. I believe that government has a role in funding research, especially fundamental, applied research, and even just before commercialization. Tapi saya nak tanya panel kita berkenaan dengan peranan penyelidik R&D untuk memenuhi the industry needs and also the demand-driven R&D that we see in other countries. Maybe Professor Chong, you want to start?
Yeah, I think this is a constant issue that we bring up. I'm not sure if we understand the underlying issues with regards to the participation of private sector in terms of R&D. As I mentioned before, I think partly it's because that the R&D arm, for example, if we are talking about pharmaceutical industry, right? They do not actually have the R&D arm here. Some of them have them in Japan, Korea maybe, and a majority of them would be in the US and the UK or the Europe. So therefore, I think in terms of historically, they are really not in this region. In this region, I think probably countries like Singapore, Japan, and Korea would probably take the lead in terms of R&D. So we have to try and understand what does it take for companies like those to invest in R&D here in Malaysia, because it's a cycle, isn't it? If we are able to have this kind of industry, then automatically people will see jobs and they will encourage their children to go into this the science stream and and fulfill these high-paying jobs. So it is really.
Let me ask you specifically on what you're doing. You're working on a vaccine for certain types of cancer, for nasopharyngeal cancer. How do you get your R&D on the radar of the big pharmas like Sanofi, Pfizer? How does that work? You're here in Malaysia doing great work, but as you said, the ecosystems elsewhere, they have marketing arms here. Pfizer Malaysia has marketing arm. They're not doing R&D. How do you get attention from these big pharmas?
So partly is through grants. So we were able to get our vaccine on the radar of people because we won international grants. So these were the Newton Untuk Omar grants that were coming out from Academy of Science together with the Medical Research Council in the UK. So it's a G2G thing. And because we were able to assess our collaborators in the UK, so we were put on the radar for biotech companies in Europe and in the UK. And we also managed to leverage on our previous work. So we had a lot of previous work. As I mentioned, we were funded by MOSTI in identifying these targets for the antigen to begin with. So we patented our research diligently and published diligently. And because of all of that track record, we were able to get one of these international G2G grants. And following that, we were able to have visibility and be and have the biotech industry appreciate the work that we have done. But I mean, we did all the kind of right things, because the industry will not be very happy if you didn't patent your work and you didn't publish well and you didn't do your work to the international standards. So we had to do all of that. I mean, despite whether we are working in the international arena or working in Malaysia. So something like what Azali said, we have to be very conscious about what is international standards and still try and apply all of this here in Malaysia. Because one of these days when you are, you know, of that standard, you will be, and somebody comes knocking, you have to be ready.
Yeah. So saya nak pergi kepada Puan Mohaini. You're doing some research in tapai pulut and probiotics. Clearly ada commercialization angle there. So apakah harapan Puan Mohaini daripada R&D ke arah commercialization of your product?
Berkenaan dengan R&D kepada commercialization of my product is pada waktu sekarang ni, the stage of my tapai is on the selecting of the best probiotic. So in which finally we will select the best one probiotic, and in the end we have to test on the animal before we release it to the consumer. So there are a lot of stages that we need to go into before commercialization. And harapan saya, of course, we want to commercialize this tapai because we want to make it as good as yogurt in the market. And one day we hope that this tapai pulut can be picked up in the dekat rak Tesco, Giant. We can pick up there. So this is one of my biggest hope, that my product will be there on the shelves. Not my product, the mostly funded product actually. Yeah.
So I think it's important penyelidik dia ada endpoint dia ada dia punya, you know, you have that endpoint and not just looking at the details of your research. Saya nak pergi kepada saudara Azali semula ya. Saya nak tanya berkenaan dengan ini isu bukan hanya pembiayaan lah, tetapi isu allowance untuk GRA di universiti. Ada setengah orang yang kata GRA ini tak payah bagi allowance yang tinggi sangat sebab they're doing research anyway, they're students anyway. So mungkin Cik Azali boleh bagi pandangan sedikit tentang betapa pentingnya kita memperkasakan komuniti penyelidik di universiti dan juga di RI.
Pada pendapat saya, penyelidik merupakan tunjang utama dalam apa-apa sahaja grant penyelidikan. Tanpa penyelidik, saya percaya yang sesuatu projek itu tidak mampu untuk disempurnakan dan dilengkapkan dalam tempoh yang diberi. Berdasarkan pengalaman saya sendiri dan berdasarkan pemerhatian saya dengan rakan-rakan penyelidik yang lain, saya dapati terdapat beberapa rata-rata penyelidik di Malaysia ini dan pelajar PhD dalam masa yang sama melakukan 2-3 kerja untuk menampung kos pembelajaran dan untuk menampung kos sara hidup. Jadi saya berpendapat sekiranya allowance dinaikkan kepada penyelidik ini, dia dapat meringankan beban penyelidik dan dapat memberi ruang kepada mereka untuk lebih fokus kepada penyelidikan yang sedang dijalankan. Then I have to say financial issue among students is one of the biggest issue. I think we have a lot of intellectual students, we have a lot of intellectual and very creative researchers, but disebabkan oleh kekangan kewangan, ada sebahagian daripada mereka meninggalkan pengajian dan mencari peluang pekerjaan yang lain. Sedangkan I believe that the talent that they have in them is better being applied in research. Ya, itu pandangan saya.
Professor Chong, should we be paying our GRAs more, or is it enough that they are privileged enough to work with brilliant scientists like you and touched by genius? Shouldn't that be enough for these GRAs? Why should we give them more money, more allowance?
If you put the question like that, it's kind of interesting. But of course, we should be paying them more. I mean, I can't believe it was just last year. I think researchers are still being paid by the day. So, and if we are expecting, for us to be the creators of technology instead of the users, and you need creative people. You want to attract the best brains, the ones who not only are creative, diligent, but also have leadership qualities where they would be able to lead the country in the future. So every brilliant scientist that you are working with, and I know you have quite a few advisors from the Young Scientist Network, from the academy, and also the academicians. All of them, and including myself, was once some sort of a GRA or a research assistant or a PhD student, right? So therefore, we really need to pay our researchers fairly. We're not saying you have to we are asking for above and beyond, but why would somebody stay back in academia and try and do creative R&D when they could get a job outside and climb the corporate ladder? And a lot of these, like what Azali said, is not a choice. It's not like, okay, if you are passionate, you should stay, right? But people need to eat, and some of these GRAs, obviously they have families, right? And the decision is no longer up to them alone. If they can't feed their family, how creative can they be?
Puan Mahayani, you are a GRA, are you?
Yes.
So coming back to my question, isn't it enough that you're there, knowledge for knowledge sake? I mean, you're doing research. So what is this big fuss about needing to give you allowance? What is it that you do anyway as a GRA? Mungkin ada yang mengikuti FB Live kita yang tak tahu. What does a GRA do?
GRA seperti yang dikatakan oleh Encik Azali sebentar tadi, mereka merupakan core dalam sesebuah projek. Tanpa mereka, memang projek tak jalan. Mereka ni generally what they do actually, they need to mengkaji, mengumpul data, menganalisa, menulis laporan, help the principal investigator to support them in doing the reports. And we can see that with this researcher, they are the one who publish the papers, they are the one helping and supporting the patenting, they are the one who are doing at the back of the stage, doing the commercialization of the product itself. And kesemua usaha yang mereka lakukan ini sebenarnya adalah membuktikan bahawa penyelidik adalah keberkesanan penyelidik dalam melancarkan sesebuah projek R&D. Dan kita dapat melihat juga penyelidik bukan sahaja penting dalam projek, malah mereka juga seolah-olah menjadi orang tengah antara joint venture antara contohnya antara syarikat dan juga institusi-institusi pengajian ataupun research center. Dengan ini kita dapat melihat bahawa pentingnya penyelidik, serta saya dapat seperti yang diterangkan oleh Encik Azali sebentar tadi, allowance untuk penyelidik sememangnya sejak dulu lagi tidaklah sebanyak seperti yang akan dilancarkan oleh YB sebentar lagi. Dan
macam
saya dapat merasa
saya nak lancarkan banyak ke tidak?
We are hoping for the best.
Yeah.
But so coming back to soal GRA, balik kepada Cik Azali sebelum kita pergi kepada isu allowance ini, mungkin boleh jelaskan kepada penonton di FB laluan kerjaya seorang penyelidik di Malaysia. What is the career path of somebody who wants to go into research and development in Malaysia, and what is the ideal?
Pada pandangan saya, untuk lepasan ijazah PhD dan sarjana, terdapat dua cabang utama, two main branch. The first one is either academic and the other one is industry. So dan kebanyakan pelajar yang sedang melaksanakan program ijazah PhD, kebanyakan mereka pada dahulunya kebanyakan mereka memikirkan career path adalah sebagai seorang penyelidik di universiti, pensyarah, menjadi seorang pensyarah, tapi disebabkan oleh pertumbuhan pelbagai institut research, so mungkin industri juga menjadi satu cabang kerjaya pada masa depan. Tapi walau bagaimanapun jika diperhatikan, berbalik kepada soal kepada isu yang dibawa oleh Prof berkenaan dengan brain drain, kebanyakannya lepasan-lepasan ijazah PhD ini terlalu ramai, terlalu banyak, tapi tak mampu, peluang pekerjaan yang dikeluarkan, yang ditawarkan oleh IPTA dan industri agak kurang. So ini menggalakkan mereka untuk mencari peluang yang lebih kompetitif dan di pay more, dan sadly peluang-peluang itu kebanyakannya ada di luar negara. So jadi selain daripada saya berharap agar selain daripada kenaikan allowance untuk GRA untuk pelajar PhD dan master, saya berharap agar kerajaan Malaysia juga mewujudkan lebih banyak peluang pekerjaan sama ada dalam institusi pendidikan awam ataupun mewujudkan lebih banyak research institute supaya graduan-graduan PhD dapat memenuhi kekosongan dan dapat menggerakkan kajian di Malaysia supaya satu hari nanti research dekat Malaysia ini setara dengan negara-negara maju yang lain.
Ya, saya nak ambil poin tu, tanya Puan Mohaini. Waktu saya dilantik sebagai Menteri Sains, saya ialah seperti biasa Menteri Sains yang baru, saya kata saya nak memperkasakan lagi pendidikan STEM. So saya keluarkanlah kenyataan tersebut dalam media sosial saya. Lepas tu saya dapat reaksi yang sangat negatif daripada graduan STEM. Mereka kata, ya, you nak galakkan STEM tapi kita tak ada kerja. Tak ada kerja untuk graduan STEM, tak ada kerja untuk PhD STEM. Hashtag Menteri Bodoh, hashtag Sembang. Jadi saya nak tanya ni Puan Mohaini, is it true that we are asking you to do PhD in STEM but there are no jobs out there for you?
Yang saya pasti saya bukanlah student yang buat hashtag tu
Yeah. Present company exempted.
Saya rasa apa yang dikatakan oleh pelajar-pelajar bila kita keluar sebagai PhD graduate, kita tiada pekerjaan sebab our academic industry is too congested. Saya boleh rasakan ia benar, tetapi dengan apa yang Cik Azali katakan tadi, dengan usaha sama daripada pihak kerajaan untuk mewujudkan lagi banyak research center, banyak lagi peluang-peluang industri, dari situ kita dapat transfer PhD student yang seringkali dimomokkan dengan akademik tinggi. Oh, keluar saja PhD graduate kena jadi academician, keluar saja kena jadi pensyarah. Jadi kita kena break that stigma, berikan mereka satu peluang di mana mereka boleh pelopori dalam bidang research dari segi industri makanan, industri pharmaceutical dan lain-lain. Dan saya juga personally mempunyai pengalaman R&D dalam bidang industri dalam syarikat di salah sebuah syarikat tenusu selama 2 tahun, di mana bila mana saya melompat ke dalam bidang penyelidikan menjadi student, saya melihat dua R&D ini adalah dua bidang yang tidaklah banyak beza, di mana di bahagian industri kita dapat melihat they are what they want to do is to improve their business. Whereas in penyelidikan, they have the end of the milestone. What is the end of the objective? For example, commercialization of the product. Jadi, di mana kita dapat melihat dengan adanya pelbagai industri memperbagaikan dan mewariasikan industri ini, saya percaya PhD graduate, master graduate mendapat peluang yang sama seperti academician di institusi pengajian tinggi.
Profesor Chong, PhD ataupun kelulusan PhD dalam bidang STEM daripada universiti di Malaysia tidak ada nilai komersial. Setuju ke tidak?
I think tak setuju because depends on the bidang, right? I think some of our graduates are actually snatched up very quickly. Even in overseas, a lot of them, for example, our computer science and AI graduates, they are really good. They get offers from jobs from even China and Hong Kong way before they graduate. So, and these are going into industry. But in terms of their opportunities in Malaysia, I am a bit doubtful because they may not have that same opportunity. So there are some of our researchers who are working very closely with industry. I think that would give their graduates a better chance to peep into the industry world, and also obviously the networking and the ability to connect with these people. So from our own experience, we actually do have a struggle to get talent for the work that we do. I mean, for my group particularly. So as you know, we may want to develop our vaccine. So for example, we will need people who will be able to negotiate, the business development person, or even science graduates that are used to the law, right? The patenting law and how you patent in many countries and what kind of deadlines you need to meet. So for those, actually, we do have issues, and if we want to develop further and have the good ecosystem, I think we need to develop in areas that where we hope to achieve and slowly plan a long and sustainable plan in order to get there.
Yeah, thank you. I think all of you have touched on a very important point. We've been talking about, kita banyak sentuh soal triple helix lah, quadruple helix lah, quintuple helix lah. I lost track of how many helix there is, academia, industry, all sorts of things. But I think one big push that I need to do as a policymaker for science is to really encourage industry to invest more in R&D. And to invest more in not just research and development projects, but also in the research community. Kita melihat di Malaysia, business spending on R&D is coming down, and that's not good for the future competitiveness of this country, because as you know, for advanced economies, their companies end up doing a lot of R&D, or at least appropriate R&D from the universities. Jadi ini antara cabaran yang kita hadapi, bahawa industri masih lagi tidak melihat R&D sebagai satu pemacu kepada their business model, and that's something that I'm trying to change gradually by engaging with industry and asking them to pick up the slack as far as not just expenditure, but really engaging with the research community. And leveraging on Malaysia's capabilities in R&D. Jadi kita ada sedikit masa lagi, dan masa ini mungkin saya nak khususkan kepada topik hari inilah, iaitu ceiling bagi allowance untuk GRE. Pada tahun 2006 hingga 2019, ceiling allowance yang dibenarkan untuk dibayar kepada seorang GRA di bawah dana R&D MOSTI adalah sebanyak, this is the ceiling adalah sebanyak RM2,500 sebulan untuk tempoh antara 18 hingga 36 bulan. Of course, when I came in, I asked what do we pay GRAs, and this is what they told me. I said agak rendah ceiling allowance kita, because that's a ceiling. Sometimes it's less than that, ya. Dan kalau kita nak bangunkan generasi sains yang kompeten, yang dapat memacukan ekonomi negara, hasrat MOSTI untuk mensasarkan bilangan penyelidik kepada 130 per 10,000 of our workers, that's our target lah. Kita nak target 100 bilangan penyelidik, ratio dia 130 bagi setiap 10 ribu tenaga kerja menjelang tahun 2020. Ini pun 2025. Then we have to encourage them with not just an ecosystem, but also look after their welfare. Because R&D, of course, GRAs, soal sara hidup sangat penting. I mean, we can't just leave you there. So I've asked MOSTI to look at certain things. Contohnya gaji permulaan pegawai teknikal penyelidik dan sains yang bertaraf tetap. Saya juga telah cek kadar inflasi mengikut indeks harga pengguna dan juga taburan pendapatan isi rumah mengikut laporan survey pendapatan isi rumah Household Income Survey tahun 2019 daripada DOSM ataupun Jabatan Perangkaan Malaysia. Oleh demikian, saya hari ini, I tried my best. This is the best that we could do for now, but I hope it's a start. Jadi daripada ceiling 2,500 sebelum ini, MOSTI telah memutuskan untuk menaikkan allowance GRA dalam skim pembiayaan dana R&D dalam MOSTI mengikut kelayakan akademik, iaitu sebanyak RM3,200 bagi GRA Doktor Falsafah dan RM3,000 bagi GRA Sarjana bermula tahun ini. Dan ini akan melibatkan kenaikan allowance kepada seramai 11,000 GRA di Institut Pengajian Tinggi di seluruh negara. I know it's not that much of an increase, but I tried my best. It's a start. Selain daripada inisiatif menaikkan allowance GRA, MOSTI pada 2 Februari telah memperluaskan pembayaran allowance ini kepada pegawai penyelidik RO yang akan dilantik oleh agensi STI kerajaan, oleh GRI, startup, PKS dan MNC untuk projek R&D dengan syarat pihak penerima dana berkolaborasi dengan Institut Pengajian Tinggi dan research organisation yang dilantik hendaklah mempunyai kelayakan akademik bersesuaian dengan projek R&D yang dilaksanakan. So not just the GRAs, but we are going to give this allowance also to ROs that have been appointed by government agencies as well as SMEs as well as MNCs for projects that are funded under MOSTI. Jadi mungkin saya boleh minta pandangan daripada panel berkenaan dengan pengumuman saya tadi. Kita mula dengan Saudara Azali.
Reaksi saya adalah saya amat positif dengan langkah yang diambil ini, dan saya harap agar GRA, RA mengambil peluang yang diberikan ini untuk terus berkhidmat dengan lebih baik, dan saya harap agar langkah-langkah ini dapat diteruskan pada masa-masa akan datang for sustainability of our Malaysian research, dan diharap agar kerajaan lebih meneruskan usaha untuk mempertingkatkan mutu kajian di Malaysia dan membuka banyak peluang pekerjaan pada lepasan-lepasan PhD dan Master. Okay.
Puan Mahani, reaksi dan juga rumusan?
Saya rasa kenaikan allowance ni merupakan salah satu elemen yang ditunggu-tunggu oleh kebanyakan pelajar seperti saya, dan inisiatif ini sangat baik dan sangat dialu-alukan oleh para penyelidik seperti kami, dan ini elemen ni, kenaikan ni seolah-olah macam menaikkan semangat kami untuk membuat lebih baik lagi dan sekaligus dapat memartabatkan R&D di Malaysia, dan kita juga dapat meningkatkan lagi mutu kajian dalam projek kita pada masa akan datang.
Professor Chong, final words from you?
I applaud the initiative. Thank you very much for the efforts in trying to make the researchers feel appreciated, and I think this is very much welcome by the scientific community. I just want a word of caution though. I mean, this happens when we train our staff. So now hopefully there are more brilliant people will come in, and we will have more people interested in science and pursuing these GRA positions. But the worrying thing is if we are not quick in putting the landscape and the ecosystem quickly, we will end up spending taxpayers' money to build out a community of scientists, and then who will then be dispersed to neighboring countries who are now trying to overtake us in terms of R&D in so many aspects as well. So I really plead to MOSTI to also, in parallel to this really nice initiative, to make sure that we also have plans to build up our infrastructure, our ecosystem, and create more jobs for these people who will be coming up very soon once they finish their MSc or PhD.
Profesor Chong, Puan Mohaimi, Cik Azali, thank you very much. Terima kasih atas pandangan-pandangan tersebut tadi. Ini hanya langkah pertama. Seperti mana yang disebut oleh Profesor Chong tadi, kita tidak boleh melaksanakan perubahan secara piecemeal sahaja. Ini adalah usaha pertama untuk mengangkat sedikit semangat dan juga martabat golongan penyelidik di universiti, di IPT dan juga di syarikat-syarikat swasta dan juga di mana-mana sahaja, supaya they feel not just appreciated, but we also look after their welfare. But as I said, this is the first step in many steps towards building a greater scientific ecosystem in Malaysia. Agar satu hari nanti Malaysia akan menjadi sebuah negara yang maju, a high-tech nation, an advanced nation, and our economy is driven by science, technology, and innovation. Terima kasih kepada semua yang telah mengikuti saluran FB Live, MOSTI, dan juga saluran FB Live dari page pribadi saya. Kita sama-sama memartabatkan sains untuk negara. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera.